Hi, everybody. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about a topic that I usually don't cover because it goes into the realm of politics. And I'm going to talk about the Supreme Court justices and what's going on today. So currently we have 6 conservative Supreme Court justices and 3 liberal Supreme Court justices. And as you probably guessed, the conservatives were appointed by Republican presidents, while the liberals have been appointed by Democratic presidents. President Biden is a Democrat and he's liberal. And right now, what happened was Stephen Breyer, whom you see pictured here, is retiring. He's 84 years old. He has been getting a lot of harassment. People have been asking him to retire because they're afraid that if the Republicans should come into office in the next term, that the Republicans will appoint another conservative, and they want to have a more balanced Supreme Court with as many liberals as possible. That's what the Democrats want. Of course, the Republicans want as many conservatives as possible. And so Stephen Breyer has been a reliable liberal. He votes what people would say is leans to the left. In the United States, liberal correlates to this idea of sort of leaning to the left. And so Stephen Breyer is that. And so what Joe Biden has said, and what he said in 2020, was that he was going to nominate, if he were to get the chance, he would be nominating a Black woman to the Supreme Court. Now, let's take a look at the composition of the Supreme Court. We're going to talk about the violation that this poses to Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. I'm very familiar with that because I teach it in a university. I have a PhD in business management, and one of the areas I teach is human resource management. And in human resource management, we talk a lot about Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibits discrimination based on race, religion, color, national origin, or sex. And recently, just added to the sex category, we're also now looking at sexual orientation and gender identity. And so I want to say hi to Rebuke and Reprove, and also to Slam RN. Great to see you. And so good to see everybody. So let's take a look at this. We're going to look at the Supreme Court justices. We're going to look at how specifically this idea that we're just going to identify a Black woman for this role and how that excludes all of the other minority categories. So we're going to look at the demographic composition of the Supreme Court and also the demographic composition of the United States. And we'll talk a little bit about some legal terms like manifest imbalance and affirmative action. So we're going to get into that. And I'm actually going to use the slides that I use in one of my classes, the section on legal issues. And so I'm going to show you the slides so that I can teach you, if you don't know much about this and you're not familiar with Title VII, or you're not familiar with some of the legal issues that we talk in the United States, you will know that very soon. But before we do that, let us just know that we have 6 men currently on the Supreme Court, and we have 3 women. Now, of the 6 men, one of them is an African American, one's a Black man, and the other one, and they're among the females, there's a Hispanic woman. And so there is a little bit of diversity on the Supreme Court today, but not very much. And so just so that you have a review of who the people on the Supreme Court, I'm just going to show you these slides. So we have here John Roberts. You can see him right here. He's born in 1955. Clarence Thomas. He was born in 1948. Stephen Breyer, born in 1938. You can just see them pictured here. Samuel Alito, he was born in 1950. Sonia Sotomayor, she was born in 1954. Elena Kagan, she was born in 1960. Neil Gorsuch, 1967. And Brett Kavanaugh, 1965, and our most recent Supreme Court Justice, Amy Coney Barrett, 1972. I happen to be a big fan of Amy Coney Barrett. I really like her. There's something about her personality I can relate to, and I think it's because she has affiliations with the Midwest, and she also has an affiliation at Notre Dame, which is a great school. And so anyway, so those are our Supreme Court justices. So I want to say hi to people. And so, yes, it's a pro-life majority court right now. So let's take a look at the law, and we're going to look at how this all breaks down. So I'm going to show you our legal system. So let me share another screen with you, and I'm going to explain what's going on here so that you understand where I'm coming from, that I'm not just out in left field on this. Okay, we're right here in my wheelhouse, my academic wheelhouse right now. So here is Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Okay, so let me just get back to where I can see you guys on the screen. Oops. Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. So hold on just one second while I get this all worked out. Okay, so Title VII of the Civil Rights Act thankfully was put into place in 1964. So it's been around for a while. What this says is there's no discrimination. You cannot discriminate against people based on their race, religion, color, national origin, or sex. Again, like I mentioned, also included in this is discrimination against people who are pregnant, discrimination against people for whom they marry, marital status, the number of children, that's all included in that idea. And of course, also sexual orientation and gender identity. Now, which religions, you say? Does it have to be the world major religions, the top 7 religions? Well, no. It just has to be a sincerely held belief. Okay, so it could be Buddhism, could be Hinduism, Christianity, Judaism. Sure, it could be all of those. It could be Confucianism. It's a belief system that guides your life, guides principles in your life. And you might be surprised to find that atheists and agnostics are also protected in the United States against discrimination under this law, because the way it's put out there is it's a belief system that answers your questions in life. Okay, so it guides your decisions and answers your questions. And so if you're an atheist or an agnostic, you are protected against discrimination in the workplace, which I would hope you would enjoy that. And then there's this idea of bona fide occupational qualifications. So for example, in some jobs, there might be these bona fide occupational qualifications, meaning that you have to be somebody who's a member of one of these groups in order to perform this particular job. So for example, if I am looking at casting somebody in a movie to play somebody who is a Mexican living in Mexico in a Mexican family, I'm probably going to want to cast these people from that group, because, or at least looking representative, be culturally representative of that group so that it sort of fits. Okay, there are certain deals like that. If I tell a firefighter in Dallas they need to be able to scale a 6-foot fence, that's a bona fide occupational qualification there, because apparently there's a lot of 6-foot fences that firefighters have to be able to scale. Now that's going to adversely impact some protected groups like women and people who are older, who are protected under the Age Discrimination and Employment Act, or people with certain disabilities. They're less likely to be able to scale a 6-foot fence. However, it is a bona fide occupational qualification because it's one of the major parts of the job. Now, here's where we get into the interesting stuff. Manifest imbalance. If you look at the Supreme Court and you ask yourself, is there an imbalance in its demographic composition? And what does that mean? It means that there is sort of a lopsidedness. Well, yes, we know that there's about 50% of the women 50% of the people in the United States are females. And if we have 6 males and 3 females, then there's a bit of an imbalance there. It's not representative of the United States. So Biden's idea that he wants to correct the manifest imbalance through actively targeting the underrepresented female population is fine, so long as the candidates are equally qualified, so far as they meet the qualifications. But there are other groups who are also not represented. In fact, as you noticed when I showed you the pictures of everybody, we have no Asians, okay? No people of, say, Chinese, South Korean, Indian descent on the Supreme Court. And so you could think about actively targeting this underrepresented group as well. We also don't have much representation from other populations. So let's take a look at who's covered under this. Okay, so let me just mention this really quickly. The law covers all private employers, state, local, and federal government employees, and educational institutions that employ 15 or more people. So those are the people who are covered. And this is what our ethnic composition looks like here in the United States. So we would guess, so you can see here, the white population, 60%. So we would expect in the Supreme Court that we would have a majority of people on there who are white, because we have a larger white population in the United States. Then we get to 18.5% Hispanic, 12.2% Black, 5.6% Asian. Then we have 2.8% multiple races, American Indian or Alaska Natives, 0.7%, and Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islanders, 0.2%. And so that is what our composition looks like. And so the issue is here with Joe Biden is my point is not to say that it's not a notable idea or a worthy idea to say that, yes, I would like to actively target underrepresented groups to correct the manifest imbalance in the Supreme Court. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. That's actually good. But when he extends he distinguishes which particular group to the exclusion of all of these other groups, I think that is something that is where he's mistaken. And so I'm going to take a look at see what we have here. So Harry Stark says, slam theoretically, can someone say we will not employ people who have a lower wage than X dollars? We will not employ people who have a lower wage than a certain amount of dollars. So people usually would actually probably not employ people who have a higher wage, who demand a higher wage. So a lot of times employers will ask you, how much money do you make? Sometimes they want to know how much money you make in your current job. And sometimes they'll ask you, how much money do you expect to make? What kind of salary are you looking for? And if you say a number that's way too high, that probably is where you would not have the job opportunity. So yeah, Utopia Buster, I have to agree with you. Yeah, Asian Lives Matter. We don't have any Asian representation in the Supreme Courts. And we do have a lot of political stuff going on with Asian people. For example, there's current lawsuits going on against Harvard and against the University of North Carolina. Right now, a lot of Asian students are suing because the expectations and the test scores that they have to achieve to get into those two institutions are much higher than other demographics. And that's not fair. That's not fair because they're at a disadvantage, and it's been shown, it's been demonstrated that you can get into those institutions if you're a white person with lower scores than Asian people. And if you're a Black person, same thing, Hispanic, Native American, with lower scores than Asian people. And so that is not fair. So they're suing over that. So anyway, my intention today was to make kind of a quick video on this kind of stuff, just to point out where I'm coming from. But is there a question or anything that I can answer? This is my academic area. And so if you've got a question about Title VII, who's covered, any of that kind of stuff, or you're wondering what kind of discrimination lawsuits are out there, today we face a lot of discrimination lawsuits. So that's something that you can go to the EEOC.gov, and unfortunately, you'll see a bevy of them. You'll see a whole bunch of lawsuits. People sue quite frequently, saying that they were discriminated against in the workplace, and people are making decisions based on something that doesn't have to do with the person's performance or seniority or education or other factors that you can use when you're making employment decisions. If decisions are based on somebody's race or their religion or anything like that, that could be discriminatory. Now, Godless Granny on Twitter said something to the effect of, do I think that AIG should be able to exclude people who would not sign this statement of faith? My initial response was to think that the AIG, which she was referring to, was the AIG Insurance, the very large insurance company. But instead, she was referring to the Answers in Genesis group. And she said, is it okay that they have a requirement that you have to sign a statement of faith? You're a Christian and you have to go with that. Answers in Genesis is a Christian organization. It's a religious organization. And so religious organizations can have those requirements. There's an exemption for them. Okay. We've got decisions that recently were made about religious schools. So about Christian schools making decisions about administrators or teachers. And in some of those cases where they were making decisions about teachers and the teacher felt that the decision that they made was based on, say, age or something like that, the courts decided that if the person has there's a ministerial exception. So if the person does teaching of, say, Christianity in the classroom, then they're considered more of a minister. And so the decisions are not subject to Title VII, which you might find interesting. So Holy Spackle says, do you believe there is real discrimination in workplaces? Oh my gosh, yes. Yes. There's still a lot of discrimination in the workplace. We talk about it every day when I teach in my class. I have the students bring in cases. Yesterday, they just did that. In fact, they just, it was Tuesday. I had them bring in cases that they found. I said, go online, find me cases of discrimination, sexual harassment, all that kind of stuff. And they bring in a ton of cases from all kinds of popular companies that you're very aware of, and also sometimes of smaller companies. See a lot of it. In fact, I've just written a case, and it's under review right now on a company that's in Colorado that had a pretty brutal case. What the employer of that company wanted to do was I should say, one of the managers in that company. What she did was she did not want these people who were North African to be personal care providers to employees in this health organization. And it was like kind of like an assisted living facility. She did not want these people of North African origin to do that. So what she did is she created a test, which she never validated. She created a test and she told all the personal care providers that they had to get a certain score on the test or they would be fired. And these people of North African descent speak English as a second language. Their reading ability was their ability to comprehend that was a little bit lower because, again, English is their second language. They really didn't need the written English. So anyway, it wasn't validated. She gave them the test, and then she ended up firing all of them, and they sued. And the court ended up settling outside of court. It was a pretty bad case, but it was definitely a case of discrimination. And I see lots of cases, unfortunately, lots of cases of age discrimination, lots of cases, especially since 9/11, of religious discrimination against Muslims. We also see cases of discrimination against, there just recently was one against, there's several cases actually that were adjudicated in the Supreme Court about people who are gay, and they were discriminated against. And those cases went to the Supreme Court. And that's one of the reasons why in 2020, they made the decision that you can no longer discriminate against people for their that status, their sexual orientation status. And so that's something that's out there. So what else do we have here? Let's see. Have you followed the Blizzard Activision? Yes, my students two students brought the Blizzard Activision cases in. Yes, very severe. We still see lots of sexual harassment going on. Blizzard Activision, yes, definitely a boys club online. And apparently it was just acquired by, now I'm forgetting who acquired Blizzard, but somebody acquired Blizzard. I want to say it's Microsoft, but I could be wrong. But anyway, so we've got lots of cases of sexual harassment still going on. Nike had sexual harassment, Uber, sexual harassment. It's just a lot of cases of that. Obviously, when you already know Fox News, and you already know people like Matt Lauer and Bill O'Reilly and Roger Ailes and Harvey Weinstein. We've got tons of cases out there that are very visible, but also less visible in these companies. So sexual harassment is obviously prohibited under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. So you should not be harassing women in the workplace. It tends to be male supervisors harassing female subordinates, but we still see other cases at Tavern on the Greenery in central New York. It used to be there. It's not there anymore, but one of the managers, who is male, was busy groping people, harassing people. We have cases at the Cheesecake Factory where males were harassing other males. You get that sometimes. We've also had cases where females harass females or females harass other males. So there's definitely tons of sexual harassment stuff going on. Now, do we still see racial discrimination? Yes, sadly we do. We still see people name calling, saying very offensive words to other people, and being witnessed by others. You have to always make sure in a lot of these cases that you do find evidence. I have a coworker right now who's dealing with a lawsuit in one of his organizations, and he's running a business. He's got several locations in this business, and he's got a pretty good number of employees. And he has an opportunistic employee who's claiming that there was harassment, but it's just a he said, she said, and there's absolutely no evidence. And so it's one of those things where it seems that he's sort of being hoodwinked here, and is going to end up having to pay money to some lawyers and all that. And it's just one of those cases. But anyway, I don't believe there is harassment going on, and I do think there are some opportunists in some cases out there. So that's one thing. But you always want to check that. You want to check that also on sexual harassment. Make sure that these aren't opportunistic people claiming sexual harassment. So you want to make sure that you do that. So anyway, yeah, Weinstein was abhorrent. I agree with you, Holy Spackle. And great to see everybody here. Great to see Taking Back Eden, Utopia Buster, Susan. So let's see what we have here. I don't know what Taking Back Eden, so I'm not sure what you're saying right there. So whoever Brandon touched me inappropriately a long time ago, that I'll just remember when they're nominated. Whoever Brandon picks. I'm not sure what we're talking about there. So let's see if we can get back to some questions if there's anything. Oh, here we go. Harry Stark. Can we discriminate people based on food preferences? This might sound silly, but is it possible? You do not have any protection based on your food preferences, okay? Just like tattoos, you're not given any legal protection if you decide to cover your body in tattoos. Or if you have piercings, you have no legal protections for piercings. So if somebody decides that they don't want to hire you because you've got tattoos all over your face or a nose ring, then that is up to them. You don't have legal protections for that. I'm just adding on. But you also, there's no legal protections against food preferences and also political preferences. So if your boss decides he or she does not like your conservative opinions or your liberal opinions, they might, we're in an at-will state, means that their boss can hire and fire at will, might decide to let you go. And that's one of the kind of scary things out there in this world of social media, where your political preferences are probably going to be exposed. And so that's that. So I'm just going to keep looking to see if I see any other questions. So no, if you like noodles, then we will not employ you. That's Harry. If that's there isn't any specific legal protections against people who like noodles or don't like noodles. All right. So I'm going to keep looking here to see. The act does not mention class. Is class fair game to discriminate? That's a great point, Harry. What usually happens with class is it's subsumed under the ethnicity group, because a lot of times you'll see that people in, say, Blacks and Hispanics tend to have greater levels of occupation in some of the lower classes. And so you see that sort of thing. So if you see class discrimination, probably a lawyer would link that to race discrimination. Okay, so that's how that would play out. But yes, like Susan said, class is a variable thing. You can be born in one class and move up and down. That's so true. What's interesting, I'll just kind of piggyback on that with another statement. In India, as you know, many people who live in India are Hindu, and in the Hindu religion, there's a caste system. Now, the government outlawed the caste system, but everyone knows which caste they were assigned. So people tend to know. If you ask a person who's from India which caste they're in, they will know which one. And so it's still something that is in the back of the minds. You cannot move out of the caste. So if you're born into the untouchable caste, you can't move out. What you can do, though, that I found out from my Hindu coworker, which I thought was really interesting, if you're in the lower castes and you're not very happy about being in the lower caste, then what you can do is you convert to Christianity and you renounce Hinduism, and Christians don't believe in the caste system. So that's that. Hey, Veckel, great to see you. And great to see Holy Spackle and Taking Back Eden. And so I'm just talking about what I just summarized. My main point in this is that if Biden makes choices, he wants to actively target underrepresented groups. I'm just saying that he should cast the net a little bit wider to include all of the underrepresented groups, Native Americans, Asians, other people too. So that's the thing. Find qualified people from underrepresented groups if he's trying to correct what they call a manifest imbalance. Okay, so I'm going to zoom back here. So it's good to see you guys. It's good to see everybody. I'm just going to ask if you have other questions or thoughts. Good to see you, Sal. Evidence and reasons. Age, can you discriminate against that? Let me tell you about age. So age discrimination is, you cannot discriminate against somebody who's 40 or older. And that act is called the Age Discrimination in Employment Act. Most states do not prevent reverse discrimination, meaning discrimination against younger folks. Okay. So what that means is that if you're younger and your boss says, oh, you don't have enough experience, you're too young for this position, that is acceptable in most states. Like Florida has a place where we do not give explicit protections for younger people under the age discrimination. But if they're older, now you notice they don't give you a top. They don't say 40 to 70. It's just 40 and older. So there's no discrimination. And we do get a lot of lawsuits. Google had a lawsuit not too long ago where a person thought that he was being discriminated against because he was being referred to as a Greygler, and people were kind of making fun of his age and that kind of thing. And in these techie companies, we have lots of younger people. Tends to be a lot of younger people. And so yeah, Utopia Buster says, how would the nominee feel after being selected solely based on sex and race? See, that's one of the things one of my worries is some of the some people have endorsed the idea of trying to mandate. They look around. Here, let me just back up a little bit. If you look at Fortune 500 companies and you look at the top management teams, the people in the boards of the Fortune 500 companies, you're going to find that there's definitely a manifest imbalance. Okay. The idea is we don't have composition of those boards is not proportional to what we would expect in the demographic composition of the United States or from the areas from which they've drawn these people. So that said, some people in some places have decided that they're going to mandate representation. In Europe, in some places, they actually mandate a percentage of the top boards in these larger companies that they want to see women. So there were some mandates in place in places like Belgium, I believe it's Belgium and Norway, where they were looking at a certain percentage of women. Now that has been removed in some cases, but in California, they've decided that they want to see a certain portion of women on these boards. And some people in some places have said that. But the problem is, from a woman's perspective, from my perspective, is I wouldn't want to be picked purely because I'm a woman, or I don't want to be picked purely because I'm a woman who has this religious belief or that skin color or anything like that. I'd rather be picked based on my own merits. And I think that a lot of other women probably feel the same way. So I think that's an issue. So let's see what else we have here. I will work the religion out of you. Oh my, literally said, who said that? So that's a kind of crazy thing. So any other questions, thoughts, topics? Is it possible to discriminate against philosophical viewpoints such as Plotinus? Yes, you people, you are not given explicit protections. I showed you, I'll show it to you again, just so you can see this again in case you're just joining us. So here are the protections that you're given. Let me go back to this. So you can see right here, you're given in these groups: race, religion, color, national origin, and sex. So if it's not in that particular group, you don't have explicit protections, okay? So, and also I should go on, we've also got age discrimination, like I said, and Americans with disabilities. Those are the big acts that talk about discrimination in the workplace. So, Estelle says, I was insulted when someone said I was hired because of affirmative action. Disgusting. I was the most qualified candidate. So I should probably talk about the state of affairs also with affirmative action. Affirmative action, the idea is that, I just realized I still have this up here. So I'm going to put that up there, put that up there. The idea of affirmative action is you actively target underrepresented groups and you keep that. It's a temporary program. It's supposed to be temporary, whether it's voluntary or involuntary, ordered from the courts. You actively target underrepresented groups until you correct a manifest imbalance. But if you do achieve diversity and your population in your company is representative of the population of workers from which you draw, well, then you can discontinue the affirmative action programs. And you don't just look at the whole company. Let me explain this a little bit. If I'm looking at Walmart, for example, I'm not just looking at the overall Walmart demographics, because if I did that, I'd see very diverse people at the lowest levels in the cashier roles, for example. Lots and lots of diversity there. Not too much diversity up there in Bentonville, Arkansas. Okay, at the corporate office, in the top management team, I'm not going to find as much diversity. All right, so they still would keep these affirmative action programs in place because they look at a manifest imbalance, not just at the company as a whole. In fact, they usually don't go to the company as a whole. Instead, they look at specific roles like a cashier or a manager. They look at departments. Okay, is there diversity at my school? Is there diversity in the management faculty? Okay, they would also look at they would look at faculty, like at my school, look at faculty, look at the management faculty versus, say, the economics faculty or the finance faculty. And so they're going to look at different things like that and see if it's diverse. And usually, like I said, the higher you go, the less diverse. So that's just the way it is. Now, does that mean that it's definitely due to discrimination? There's a glass ceiling. There's no way that women and minorities can make it very high? No, that's really not the case. There is some discrimination in some places, yes. There is the case, like you just pointed out, Activision. I'm sure that was pretty bad. Uber had some pretty bad stuff going on. But, and this is the kind of the big but, the issue is that there are also choices that people make. And so there was one study that said that if both a male and a female go for a promotion and they're both rejected, the female is statistically significantly less likely to try again later for another promotion. Males are more likely to step in. Sheryl Sandberg's talked about this a lot too. She's over there at Facebook, but Sheryl Sandberg's talked in her book, Lean In, a lot about how some women just kind of don't ask for the roles. They don't actively try to self-promote as much as men do. Men might be more likely to self-promote. And so there's just a lot of cases. I mean, I think about it myself. I was asked to be an associate dean when I was an assistant professor. I didn't even have tenure at that point, but I was asked to be an associate dean. I didn't ask to be the associate dean. And I also was asked to be the president of this nonprofit. And I didn't ask to be the president. I was asked. But the person who took the role after me, he asked me, he said, I would like to be the next president. And so we voted and he became the next president. But it's just, I mean, that's just anecdotal, but that's something that I've seen. So females, yes, you need to lean in. You need to step in. If you want those corporate roles, they're definitely there for you. And a lot of businesses are actively targeting underrepresented groups to fill some of those board positions. Okay. In some cases, like I mentioned, there's some legislation forcing them to do that. So let's see what else we said. Okay. So Taking Back Eden, what does he say here? Hold on. I just saw a question here. Taking Back Eden says now in Canada, they are discriminating against one's health choices if they took all 4+ injections. Wow. They're already on the second booster. I didn't take a first booster. I'm refusing to take a first booster because I did get vaccinated back in April. I got both shots. The second one made me completely sick and nauseous. And I decided I'm not getting a booster and I've been exposed to COVID a lot. Okay. My son had it twice. He tested positive. Somehow I'm not getting it. So I think I might be one of those strange birds who's somehow immune. So it's so funny. Oh, Taking Back Eden, that's funny. So Harry Stark says, age, disabilities, food preferences, tattoos, and philosophical viewpoints. No. You cannot discriminate against people based on age, okay, if they're 40 or older in the United States. And you cannot discriminate against people based on their disabilities. These are both protected, okay, under the Age Discrimination and Employment Act and under the Americans with Disability Act. But I should point out something pretty important just to add to that, just in case you're wondering. These apply to organizations with 15 or more employees for Title VII, okay? So you have to have 15 or more employees. And if we're looking at the age discrimination, that's 20 or more employees. Americans with Disabilities, also 15 or more employees. Just to put a number on that, 52% of employees work for companies that have 500 employees or more, 52%. And of all the companies in the United States, according to a small business group, we've got 78% have fewer than 10 employees and 89% have fewer than 20 employees. So most companies out there have very few employees. So you're likely to work for a small company because there are many small companies. You're more likely, though, as I said, a majority of people do work for these very large companies. But, and we have more small companies. If you're in a small mom and pop company, you're probably not going to be able to make your claims of harassment because, I mean, I shouldn't say harassment, but discrimination because they're very small companies and they're not subject to Title VII. Okay. So that's just something to think about. Now, going to the age discrimination, in case you're wondering, Michigan, Minnesota, New Jersey, and Oregon do protect workers against discriminating against their youth. Not sure why my screen is all messed up showing this. So you can see the age discrimination right there. Oh, now it went away. Shoot, I had to stop sharing and get that stop. Okay, so yeah, so evidence and reason. So yeah, Taking Back says, I believe it. Natural immunity. I know, I haven't gotten it. I went to Colorado. My sister, I was hanging out with my sister, my brother, and a bunch of other people. And when we got back home, my sister, my brother, and my brother's whole family, his wife and his 2 kids tested positive for COVID. And in my family, just Sean, oh shoot, I named him. Just my young son tested positive for COVID, just one. So evidence and reason said there are also imbalances in the bottom of society. Most homeless are men. Most people in asylums are men. This could be due to what they call phenotypic variability in males like IQ. Well, here's what's really interesting. In the United States, males and females average about 100 IQ. However, the distribution is different. So you have more more females kind of bunching up around the 100, and you have more males at the extremes. So in the extreme intelligence, that's great. More males are there, but also the not so intelligent. so, so sorry, it's actually at both ends. We have more males occupying those positions. And unfortunately, the lower levels of intelligence correlate obviously with recidivism and with crime and a lot of those kind of things. The military says that you have to have an IQ of at least 81 to serve in the military in the United States. Why is that? Well, they found that actually people who have lower scores than that are detrimental to team work and other activities and productivity in the military. So they will not even hire people with lower scores. Now, can you change your score? Can you impact your score? Does your culture affect your score? Absolutely. Okay, so we see cultural differences in the scores here on IQ tests. And there are variations. And a lot of that's attributable to how your culture, how your parents, how the people around you endorse academics. Like, for example, Ashkenazi Jews tend to score very high on the intelligence scales, as do Asians. And in many cases, those Asian families and those Ashkenazi Jewish families really promote education. My friend, one of my really good friends, is Jewish, and she doesn't want her sons to engage in any sports in school. She thinks she and her husband think that's kind of a waste of time. He should be focused on their academics. And that's consistent with a lot of people in the Jewish population and also in Asian populations. And so it tends to be lopsided when you see the admissions in colleges towards people who have higher scores in intelligence tests because it tends to be people, lots of Asians and lots of Jewish people. Now, does that play out in salaries? Oh, yeah. Oh, sure it does. You're going to see when they look at the gender wage gap and they talk about this 82 cents on the dollar from the OECD. They didn't control for anything like job level, job type, years in the job, tenure, all that kind of stuff. They didn't control for any of that. So they're looking at apples and oranges. But after you control for all the factors and you look at racial differences and you look at differences between males and females, you'll find that if the white male's at the dollar, so he receives $1, both Asian males and Asian females on average earn $1.03. They tend to go into the STEM fields. They tend to make really good educational choices, and that benefits them in the long run pay-wise. And you'll also see the other demographics ranging between 97 cents and 98, 99 cents. Okay, so white women, women of color being lower than that. So that's just an issue. So yeah, Sal is an Asian, and he says, as for Asians promoting academics, I was hired by an Asian mom to tutor her kid. Her kid scored 96% in math, and she was so concerned he didn't get 100. She got him a tutor. Wow. Gosh, I'd be so happy if my sons came home with 96. So yeah. That's in Susan. I'm going to say what you said there. I have not seen that. So that's interesting. She says Ashkenazi Jews score high in verbal, Asians in mathematical. A lot of Asians go into the STEM fields, which is science, technology, engineering, and math. And those fields do pay pretty well. So anyway, you guys, thanks for coming in today. I hope you'll like and subscribe and do come again. I'm trying to think of what I have going on next. Yes, you might want to come to this. Tonight at 6 o'clock Eastern, I'm going to be on the Non Sequitur channel. Okay, Non Sequitur show. I've put it in the community tab in my YouTube channel, so you can link to it. But I'm going to be on there talking with Craig Reed. Craig Reed is a Christian. We're going to be talking to Steve McRae and Jim Majors and Cheshire Vic, I think she goes by. We're going to be talking to them about atheism and Christianity, and we're going to talk about the benefits to society of both. And you can believe that I've found lots of benefits to society. Okay, so we're going to be talking about that. We might even talk a little bit about governmental differences, political systems, and some other things that have come out of both religions, probably mentioning something on individual rights and property rights and all that kind of good stuff too. So yeah. So the Iron Matt, say hi, Iron Matt. So Evidence and Reason says, yay, I was on Non Sequitur channel a few weeks ago. We need to go back. If you guys are bored this afternoon or just want to fill your time, or you're not bored at all, but you just want to fill your time, go back and watch Sal, Evidence and Reasons. I'm sure he did a phenomenal job. So Anyway, I just remember, whether you eat, drink, or whatever you do, do it all for the glory of God. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day.